Yo, today I'm gonna be doing a full breakdown of my new track Glitterbeam, which is out now on OVRDUB and which sounds like this.
Glitterbeam.
So yeah, let's start off here with the intro. This is the first thing you hear in the song. This is the main vocal chop that you hear throughout the whole intro. And this first part is pitched up and there is vocodex as well as spectral gate. I'm slowly automating the cutoff off to go down so it opens up right before the actual intro begins. And I'm also introducing an ambient break, which is also slowly being brought up by this high cut filter. And right before the actual hit, I'm also low cutting it. And also we have a bunch of effects to make the transition. Simple sweep and impact, and also this sweep, which is the actual main chop that I reverbed out and recorded and then like reversed, so it leads up nicely into the actual vocal chop. Speaking of this vocal chop, this is the main thing that's happening in this intro. Here's what it sounds like without the effects. So I had low cut, a bit of OTT to compress it, stereo, and then ping pong delay and a bit of soothe to reduce the peaks. In the second part right here, I've doubled it with pitched up version. That way it keeps the intro interesting. Out of this main vocal chop we got a lot of pads and instruments. We got this one. I did reverb to make it more ambient, EQ to cut the lows. Then we have this. Just like a glittery pad that is unprocessed. Then we have a pad. Once again, just low cut. In the second part we also got this R player. On this I have low cut once again, vocodex, then a bit of reverb, EQ to cut some of the harsh frequencies, soothe to also reduce the harsh frequencies, and then panomatic to make it pound left and right. Together these all sound like this. So then in the second part of the intro I also bring back this ambient break which was in the intro. And the final thing you hear in the actual intro is a raised bass. This is what the melody looks like. Now is a good time to say that this track is in G minor, 180 BPM. This is just a faceplant preset with literally no post-processing, and it works. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for the intro. Then we get to the build-up. So in this build-up, I'll keep most of the elements of the intro. I just removed the ambient break. Also this pad gets lower in pitch. I also removed the vocal chops, and near the end of the build, I introduced the snare from the drop with an high cut. Also bringing up here the actual bass of the drop, which I recorded right here. I just have a bandpass EQ. On this side I'm just cutting the lows so I don't get the actual sub of the drop. Then I'm slowly moving up this high cut filter so it introduces the bass, and I'm also slowly automating out this reverb. You can see right here. It goes out before the actual hit. And also I changed a few of the effects. I did like this right there. Also I did this clap with reverb right before the build up. Also in this build-up I'm cutting out the riz, that way I don't get sub-frequencies. That's a tip I could give to people that struggle with build-ups. Remove a lot of elements, especially low-end elements, that way when the actual drop comes with a lot of sub-elements, it will hit harder. And also one cool way to make this happen is also to fade out all the elements, or some of the elements with reverb. So in this specific case I use N as my on the instruments group, that way all the elements from the intro slowly go down, while the drums from the drop and the actual bass from the drop slowly go up, and this way the build-up transitions nicely between the actual intro and drop. And at the end of the build-up we have the extra drop vocal.
Glitterbeam.
This is just a text-to-speech vocal if I remove the effects.
Glitterbeam.
And on this we have OTT effector with very fast delay, which makes this kinda like metallic effect.
Glitterbeam.
Then more OTT, and EQ to remove some frequencies and boost some others. Stereo, soothe to remove the harsh frequencies. EQ to remove the lows. Ping pong delay once again, this time to add more stereo, so very fast ping pong delay with maximum panning.
Glitterbeam.
And so that's it for the build, and we go to the actual drop. Let's start with the actual first element that I came up with, and that was like the foundation for the whole drop. This melodic clingy texture. So this is my classic Quenta technique that I use. For this one I threw in this sample. Weird liquid glass texture in Quenta, and then I'm playing some notes and automating the actual position. So without the effects, this is what it sounds like. Not really that melodic. And then we have a lot of post-processing for this to work, OTT. Then we got frequency shifter, which I'm automating in some of the parts. We got some EQ to remove the lows, stereo, more EQ to remove some of the annoying frequencies. Pitch map, which is the plugin that's giving it the melodic tone. It's tuned to G minor, it's like the rest of the track. And we got more OTT. Soothe to remove a lot of the high end, because it was getting like very high, as you could hear. On top of this, I added a few other elements to make it interesting. We got this main melody. This is a sample which I didn't modify a lot because it worked really well with the context of the track. I just chopped it so I could get a cool melody. On this we got low cut, more stereo, even more EQ to remove some frequencies and boost some others. Then we got spectral gate which I'm automating right here. Create this cool like effect where the melody is playing but a bit like degraded, and that way it still like leaves room for the actual main bass in some of the sections. Then as you can hear there is ping pong delay on this which I'm automating here, and then we got just more EQ, a bit of soothe, and that's it for this main melody. Then we got this which is part of a Shark's bass sample which I like chopped up, cut the sub, added vocodex, a bit of ping pong delay once again, and a bit of soothe once again. Sitting under the actual section where the main sound is happening, that way it feels less empty. And then on top of this we have a lot of effects just to fill in the space. We got this texture with has. Then we got this pad with EQ to remove the lows, reverb to put it in the background, once again soothe, and more low cut. Then we got this texture. Once again to fill in the space, pretty similar processing, once again low cut, vocodex, more stereo, and also soothe. And in some of the parts I'm also like switching the actual sample. We also got this pad which I'm reusing from the intro. This time it's pitched up to have semitones and sitting behind the bass. To fill in the space even more, I also got like this noise texture which is just like some noise coming from Trails Oscillator which I'm EQing and then putting Panomatic on top to make it pan very quick left and right. So that's pretty much like all the elements from the first part of the drop. Then we got a lot of effects. Once again, this one I'm reusing from the intro, but there are also new ones like this one, which is just a pad. I also got this crash which I added. And later in the drop we also got this thematic sample which I pitched down and chopped up to create like this cool ARP. I think the last thing that I didn't show is the actual sub bass under all this. Very like basic sub. That's usually what you want to go for with colorbass, trying to get a cleaner mix, because if you like distort your sub too much you will get too many harmonics and then it gets too hard compared to the cute colorful basses that you got on top. This one is literally just sine wave from Vital with a pitch envelope, and then I added a bit of distortion and that's it. So that's pretty much all the elements from the first part of the drop. What keeps it interesting is just all this automation on the main quenta which keeps the bass evolving throughout the whole drop. And in this part I'm also playing 3 semitones lower for the actual main bass as well as the sub. Here I'm moving like the notes around. Even though it's technically the same patch, I tried to keep it interesting. And at the end of this first part of the drop we got this feel. For this effect I'm just playing the actual MIDI of the main bass really low, and it almost like creates this bit crushed sound somehow, even though I'm like not processing the thing differently, just the sound going deeper into the same processing chain. And on top of this I also bring back the main melody, but this time it's like a non-melodic part and I have the spectral gate on. And we also got the vocal chop which I'm bringing back in this gap. And then we come to the actual second part of the first drop. This part gets like a lot more punchy compared to the softer bass in the first part. I really wanted to switch up to have a second part that is way more interesting and also gets a bit more complex in terms of arranging and elements. So the first thing you hear is this kind of like fake out, I would say. So frequency shifting down the actual main bass, and there's also a riser right here. So this riser is just sine wave with like a gliding note to make it go from low to high, and then on top of this I have a melodic impulse which is once again in G minor, some EQ to remove the lows, and stereo. Then we got this switch vocal with a lot of OTT, some EQ, stereo once again, and a bit of ping pong delay with maximum panning to make it more stereo. Then we get to the organs. Sub stays the same, main bass stays the same too, just playing like shorter notes. It's not like the main sound anymore, it's more acting as a texture in this part. I did a few more layers which are actually the main gun you will hear. We got this, just a perk with a lot of effects. Let's go through everything. Vocodex, making it like kind of watery. Got a shifter which I'm automating, EQ to remove the lows, reverb, stereo, more EQ, ping pong delay which adds like a bit more texture. Got this layer too which is also a perk with OTT, low cut, stereo, and reverb too. Also this time in the actual sparkles channel I have a different sample, this one. And we also got like this trumpet feel. Once again you can see that I'm pretty much processing everything the same. Low cut, OTT, stereo, more EQ, more reverb. And also I got another like horn layer right here, playing under the actual trumpet hit. With vocodex, EQ, stereo, and also convolver. In this part we got a lot more background effects. This part is the same but pitched up. This sustain is new, it's not even a sustain, just like bass pitched down but 4 months up, weird. And then low cut, vocodex, even more EQ, and some reverb. Just like this weird texture in the background. And this is an actual sustain right here. Also bringing back some of the texture and some of the feels. Also in this part, there's like this vocal chop, It's just like the main vocal chop of the intro, but chopped up differently. In this part, it's actually like pitched up, and I got vocodex, hello room, more reverb, and EQ to remove the lows. In the second part, it's also playing, but pitched down an octave. I'm also like adding a few layers, glitchy thing, another sample in G minor, which I'm chopping up. And on this, once again, pretty much similar processing to what we've already seen. And this sample is actually the main layer for the last part of the drop. On its own, it's a very weird sound, but it works really well layered under the other layers of the gun. So we still got this main layer. We also got this one. In this part, it's like less tonal to make room for the actual tonal layer, which is now this deeper perk. And all the layers of the gun together in this part sound like this. In this gap, before the actual second half of this part, we got feel. The main action here is driven by the actual first bass that I show you, but it's playing like a very textured part and also pitching up with this frequency shifter, which creates this very cool rising, blippy bloopy like glitch effect. And under this we got a Riz bass, Canotto Riz preset, and on this we got Smart Clip to make it more crushed, more distortion, EQ to remove some of the low mids. I want like very clean low end multipass, putting like a ton of disperser on the high end only, makes cool texture on the high end, and then finally OTT. And at the end we get this huge fade with one up fade. I'm shifting down some of the layers and also like bringing up this delay to ring out when the actual drop ends, make it transition nice, and also bringing back this non-melodic part of the sample. And also, once again, the vocal chop, and also adding a lot of effects. The last thing that I didn't talk about at all is the actual drums. This is the drums for the first part. We got basic kick and this like really cool snare. It's actually tuned to G. We got a bit of room on it, and under this we got a few hats. This small hat with transient shaper, this ride, and this like crash. For the second part of the drop, the drums evolved a bit. The snare is different. And in this part I also reversed this kick. Finally, in this part we got this hat. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for the actual first drop. Next we're gonna talk about the midsection, but before I get to the main midsection, which is my favorite part of the track, I just wanted like to show you that transition part. Very simple part. I'm bringing back all the elements from the intro, just without any drums. I also swapped the Riz out for like a softer Riz compared to like the intro one. And in this part, the main interesting thing is this piano, which is playing the same melody as the main melody of the first part of the drop. This is just the acoustic piano in flex, and this I got transient shaper to make it softer, a lot of reverb, EQ to remove the lows, and ping pong delay. And towards the end, I'm slowly fading out the Riz bass. It's the same technique I use in the build, removing the low end before the next part happens, that way the next part is more impactful, and also like bringing up some other elements like this harp, which is slowly coming back. And then we get to this part, which is my favorite part in this whole track. It's very cool, I think. Minimal, like, melodic drum bass. I don't even know, like, what genre you would consider this, but I just think it's, like, really unique and cool. So this part is quite complex, but it uses a lot of samples. It's not, like, a lot of complicated sound design. It's just, like, clever placement of samples and use of samples to make cool flow and, like, cool melodies. And the first thing you hear is the actual piano from this part with the delay. These very high last two notes, which, like, ring out on top of this section. And then we get to the actual section. This is the actual main bass that's happening in this section. This is a noir sample chopped up in interesting ways, adding clipping to make it like a bit louder and more saturated. A bit of EQ, so to reduce the frequencies, and also boosting this region where like the main melody content is, that way it has more presence in the actual section. So it's just like playing this pattern literally for the entire midsection. It's like the main foundation, and I'm also keeping the sub of this, which is not something I would usually do. So this acts both as a melodic layer and also as a sub of this section. Next thing you hear is this texture. We're using one of the texture of the first drop. Then we got this, which is just like this weird percussive loop, and I'm just like layering this on top. It's literally like unprocessed. I didn't even cut the low end, but somehow it works. And in some of these gaps, we got this. This is probably the entire track put in Puenta, playing around with knobs just to make this cool glitchy version of the drop, then pitched up and put it in some of the fields. Here I'm playing with it a bit more to just make a cool percussive layer. And also got this. Once again, the same sample from the melody of the first part of the drop with vocodex and some ping pong delay. And in this middle part we got this instrument, like a tonal snare. Third effect sounds like this. On this we got OTT, Valhalla room with maximum mix, which is giving it like this cool ambience, and then some ping pong delay. And on top of this we got some drums, kick hitting every second bar. Then we got this cool texture snare. This snare is made from two separate snares. The first foley of this snare and then this actual other snare with more texture on top. And for the last one, I'm just keeping the first snare after, which is like this tonal snare. So it keeps like the drums interesting, even the snare is like switching. And the last thing we got is this layer. So this like bubble layer and also this laser right here. And we got this hi-hat, which is the same hat as the drop. And before the actual second part of this section, once again, all like instrument playing. Once again, I'm just using like a tonal perk as the foundation for this instrument. On this I have vocodex, once again, maximum mix, Valhalla room, and once again, same big point delay. And we got this little sub, which is just Trace oscillator, 0 processing. And then we get to the actual second part. This bass is the same. The drums are literally like the same, I just add like a few more elements that are also coming from the drop. Most of these elements are the same, but just using different parts. We got this layer, which is new, just the same glitchy recording that I used pitched up before. This time it's pitched normally and chopped up to make this cool rhythm. We got this layer, which I added to, which is just like the pad of the intro chopped up. I also brought back this vocal chop that was used in the second part of the first drop. And we got the coolest thing of this entire part, which is this slap bass. It's just like playing in the gaps. This is one of the slap bass presets from Flex with a few effects, OTT, EQing, and some reverb too for ambience. You also got this weird thing. This one is the same like sample I used right here. Just playing a very small part and playing these cool harps with it. And the last thing you hear in this section is this fill, where the bass goes crazy. And the bass actually rings out on top of the next build. And then you can see shifting down this main bass. And we got this laser fill as well as this snare fill. And once again, a bunch of effects just to transition from this section to the next build. Then we get to the second build up, which is pretty much a copy paste of the first build, except that I don't bring the snare up in this one. And I also have different risers in this one. But all the other elements are literally the same from the first build. And then after this build, we get to the actual last drop. But before we actually get to this drop, we got like this little cool fake out section to make you think that you're gonna go into the exact same drop. This time, I'm just not introducing the drums at all, adding rising stuff, as well as raising the actual frequency shifter on the main bass. And also slowly thinning out the sub before there is this big Reese feel. This freeze is the shark sample that I'm pitching up and down with stereo added to the high end, and also automating this spectral gate when Glitterbeam vocal is playing, that way it leaves more room for the actual vocal. And then we get to the last drop. And so for this drop, I'm reusing quite a lot of the actual first drop, but it's just set up in different ways. The main Quenta bass is still there. Just like playing different like patterns with the notes, and I'm also of course automating Quenta differently, so it plays different parts. The layers from the gun are the same from the second part of the first drop. Still the same, but we also got like this new layer. Shark's bass, which I'm pitching up. Once again, similar processing as everything we saw with vocodex, EQ, OTT. We also got this freeze, which is the same reason as the breakdown before the drop, but I'm like putting it in some of the places to fill the space. Here I'm also using like a different freeze sample, which is one of my releases. Background elements are pretty much the same apart from this texture, which is a different one. It's actually one of my textures. It's a lot more full than the textures I used in the first drop. This sustain was already there, this layer was already there too. The actual snare is different. We got this big boy snare, which is making this second drop a lot more impactful. Just in general, this drop I want it to be like a lot more punchy and impactful. For this section, what's making this cool bubbly sound is once again the main Quenta patch, but automated in different parts. Since the gun stays the same, I'm just like switching this layer so it's differently layered on top of the gun, which is not changing. That way it keeps the basses interesting. Honestly, in this drop I kept the same elements but try to use them very differently. All the rest is pretty much the same thing. Right here I'm reusing the same reeds that you hear in the middle of the first drop. The basses are all pretty much the same. This sub is different though. It's like more punchy and has a bit more distortion, as well as this texture, which is adding white noise on top. I also have my tag right here. With a lot of distortion, EQ, just keeping the high end and some ping pong delay. This last part, I really like how it sounds. This layer is the same layer I used in the last part of the first drop, but this time I have this frequency shifter automation that makes it a bit more lasery. And in this part I'm shifting it very high. This sound on its own is very empty, but I still have all the other gun layers playing. And it's part with like this cool glitchy feel. With this cool frequency shifter automation on the main sound once again. In start, I'm making the whole drop rise before the actual last section. The snare is pitching up and going faster. I once again have a bunch of effects to make stuff rise. I have this endless smile automation to reverb out some of the elements. And in part, I have a lead playing. Once again, a tonal snare. I've been using a lot of tonal snares for melodic elements in this track with side effects sounds like this. And in this we have distortion, vocodex, OTT, more stereo, more reverb, and once again EQ to cut the lows. And we also got this hardcore lead. On this I added OTT and a bit more stereo, and it's also like playing the melody in this section to make it like even more hype before we actually go down from this drop. And going down is the goal of this last section. Once again, this reuses a lot of the elements of the intro, bringing back the main vocal chop, some of the background elements, as well as all the effects basically. The amen break is also brought back, and what is keeping it interesting this time is that I'm reusing the actual lead for these cool stabs, to making a delay on this, and also bringing out the melody of the actual drop with this little instrument, which is just the default preset on Tricks oscillator with some dimension expander and some ping pong delay once again. And throughout this part I'm raising everything back up until the last hit where the song ends, bringing back the razors from the build-ups, introducing more and more elements, as well as fading out the entire master with this low-cut EQ until the last hit right here, which concludes this track. Be sure to check out the full track right now and stream it on OVRDUB, and I see you guys in another video. Bye!